Here's the fucking thing, you guys. Here's the thing about Fluffy, guys. Listen, all week long, I've been doing fight tape and fight study, and every single thing that I've seen and looked at has pointed me to think that Sean Strickland's going to win this fight, and I think win this fight pretty dominantly, right? I mean, you look at all the weapons and the tools of Strickland, and then the style of Hernandez, the weaknesses, everything. It's just kind of looking like on paper, Sean Strickland should just go out there and dominate Hernandez. And I don't want to be the guy that's overthinking this, but I look at the odds, and obviously you don't pick bets based on odds or anything, but I'm just wondering, what am I missing? What's going on here that's leading the bookmakers or the odds makers to, have Strickland as this huge underdog and Hernandez as this huge favorite? I've done some deeper digging into the situation here, and the more and more I'm looking at it, and I'm hearing Sean Strickland talk, and you know what? I can't pick Sean Strickland to beat Hernandez this weekend, and I'm going to give you my full reasons why in this video. Just stay tuned. I think the first things first that I need to do, just go ahead and break down, is stylistically and just on paper, what is, logically speaking, why do I want to pick Strickland so bad? So just diving right into it, the weapons and tools that Sean Strickland has available to him is obviously the jab, the teep, and the cross. I mean, there's no secret, but I think his weapons really stem. I think his defense is his weapon, whereas Hernandez, I feel like his defense is his offense. And I think that's a big distinction that needs to be made between these two guys, because I think in this type of situation, I think just with how good Strickland's defense is in terms of the wrestling and the striking, I think it really puts him in a great spot to beat Hernandez. So if you look at just his weapons offensively, purely offensively, the teep. Listen, we already know Hernandez has got the chinny body. He just pulled out of a fight recently with RDR for a rib injury in which, he couldn't be cleared to take that, couldn't clear himself to take the fucking fight. Okay, so his ribs, his midsection is even chinnier than we thought before. Something's going on there that we don't know about. We had to pull out. He just said it was a rib injury. I already hate that for a guy in Fluffy who has to go against a guy in Strickland who is just spamming teep kicks the entire fight. I think by the first round in his last fight with Paulo Costa, not Strickland's last fight, but his second to previous last fight, whatever the fuck, you know what I'm talking about. I think there was like 20 teeps within the first round. So you look at a guy like that who's just going to be teeping away and teeping and teeping. Eventually one of those, 70, 80 teeps that are thrown in the fight, one of those might connect on that rib. One of them might connect on a bad spot. It's lights out for Hernandez at that point. I mean, injury that bad, it's making you have to pull out. And then you get that that rib rebroken or something like that, or just hits the wrong spot. That's something that's concerning. That's what's making me lean towards Strickland in just one aspect of it. And then you just talk about on the feet, his striking defense and his offense and that jab and the jab, the cross. I think it's all straight, which operates really well against, wrestling fighters, especially Hernandez, who does have some straight shots, but does get into those little, pocket situations and, isn't really measuring range super effectively. I do think he's actually quicker twitch, surprisingly to ever say that about Hernandez, but I think his striking is a little bit faster than Strickland's, but I think Strickland operates at range a lot better and kind of controls the range with his framing and everything. And just while we're speaking about defense, and I don't even want to talk about Strickland's offense too much because it's pretty rudimentary, it's pretty one-dimensional, but the defense is what makes Sean Strickland so impressive, especially that, the wrestling defense is great, but that striking defense, the framing, putting his arms out there, catching shots. Izzy said some quote about, he felt like he was in a dream punching, like, his punches were doing nothing. That's because Strickland is parrying every shot you throw. He's got great eyes. He's got that modified Philly shell that I think does wonders against somebody, especially in Hernandez, who his leg attacks aren't that impressive. His striking on the hands are not that great. I don't think Hernandez has a ton of weapons on the feet, and if his grappling doesn't open up his striking, which is why I think his striking has looked so decent in the past, if that isn't the case and Sean Strickland's wrestling can, hold up, which I think it actually will hold up if all things were considered, he was healthy and everything's good to go, then that's making me think, dude, wow, so Sean Strickland can defend the wrestling great. He's got heavy tree trunk legs. This guy's got a great, we've heard the stories about Strickland being one of the, the best, the hardest camp wrestlers that you could go against. And this guy's got great cardio. The cardio, I'm not even going to talk about the cardio because both these guys' cardio should hold up just fine. So that's not even a concern of mine. And if anything, I think if somebody's cardio was to fail, would be a guy in Hernandez eating body shots, being forced to shoot takedowns and getting stuffed on takedowns, I see Hernandez cardio actually going first. But I'm not even going to get into that. I'm jumping all over the fucking place. What was I even saying? Listen, Strickland has got all the tools necessary, and I think the wrestling defense, which is the one thing that people need to talk about the most. Listen, I've watched Anthony Hernandez wrestle. I am not that fucking impressed. I've wrestled some kids in my life that were tubby, and looked so unimposing, and I've gotten my ass handed to me. Don't get me wrong. And you definitely put Hernandez in that section, but just go watch that fight with Brendan Allen, man. His wrestling does not look that impressive. He just like I don't know. There's just something about it that just feels fraud to me. Like, I don't know. I just think there's something about Anthony Hernandez's wrestling that feels so fraud. When you look at a guy like Chimaev, you're like, well, that's dominance, that's wrestling. And then, I don't know, Hernandez just looks so fraud. And you could say it's because he's so efficient and so, his weight's so well placed and, he doesn't expend too much energy. But I don't know. Something about that about his, holding Strickland down part of the thing. I just can't see it. I can't see it in my head, Strickland not being able to reverse these positions until you think about the fact that Sean Strickland recently had a shoulder injury, and I'm not one to just say, you're injured, you're going to lose the fight. That's not the situation. There's been plenty of guys who have fought through injuries and won fights. But when you're talking about a guy in Anthony Hernandez who doesn't really wrestle the double leg, he wrestles the body lock. Now, what's the one defense to a body lock? One of the main defenses is a whizzer, right? A lot of those times you get into a whizzer situation, you turn your hips away from the guy and you whizzer down on it. Or, the same could be said if Sean Strickland goes to reverse position and then, a wrestling sequence occurs. Now, you might be wondering, what the hell am I talking about this whizzer for? You're losing us, okay? Sean Strickland recently, in his last fight with Dricus du Plessis, got injured with RDR, while they were a sequence in which a whizzer took place. So that automatically scares the shit out of me to pick Strickland. And you might be wondering, where am I getting this information from? It's all over the internet, of course. But I was reminded in this interview in which Strickland, brought up the shoulder situation, the whizzer, and it just kind of reminded me of everything. Like, man, that shoulder is not healthy. This is not a prime Strickland coming into this fight. I mean, on the same coin, you could say the same thing about Anthony Hernandez here, but I don't know, man. Something about this is just, it's just selling a trap to me. Like, I just feel like this is such a big trap because it's so obvious to bet Strickland in this spot because he's the better fighter, in my opinion. I think he's, versed a much higher caliber competition. And I think Anthony Hernandez is really just beating cans right now. An injured Roman Dolidze, which he brought up. And Sean Strickland had such this emphasis during this interview that that's kind of made me change my pick about, injuries now, I don't know. He just kept bringing up injuries. And if I go and fight this guy, okay, let me just get into mentality because that's really what sold me, close the package. Because at the end of the day, both guys aren't coming in healthy. An injury happens, whatever. I could see both guys end up getting injured in this fight or being compromised due to an injury. So I think on both sides of the coin, there's an injury on both sides. So forget about the injury, forget about the cardio, forget about the everything. Let's just look at mentality alone right now because this fight's getting super hard to pick. And what's really made me lean one way or another is in this interview, Sean Strickland goes out and says,
wait a year and a half and not fight or just keep fighting and fighting good guys and maybe taking an L. I'll just go fight good guys, maybe take an L, and I'll triple my pay.
Yeah.
It's and I think a lot of guys, let's just say Fluffy beats me, and Fluffy want you. I got the call. I was actually training with Ritter, and he hit me with a little whizzer, and I was like, dude, I can't. My arm, I couldn't move my arm. I went to the PI. Fight, dude. The guy's like, I broke my hand. Dude, I have an X-ray. Want to see it? My shoulder is broken. I don't know, man. I'm at an age now where you start thinking hey, maybe you want a family, things and that. So a lot of fighting is just financial security for me. Let's just say, I could probably retire now if I wanted to do that. I'm smart with my finances.
So what the fuck does this mean? Does this mean that this guy doesn't care? I mean, you could make the argument on the devil's advocate side and say, well, Sean Strickland, he doesn't care. A guy who has nothing to lose or doesn't care is a scary. Yeah, sure, but I also like taking the hungry guy that's fucking, that hasn't touched gold, that isn't eating well, that isn't waking up wondering what to do with themselves, that isn't considering retiring very soon, that isn't happy and satisfied with life. I'm not saying that's Anthony Hernandez's situation, but Strickland's very clearly saying that this is his situation here. Like he's, accomplished it all, and he's trying to think of what else he could do other than fighting. And it seems to be a situation where it's just like he doesn't know what else to do, so he's going to fight. It's not like he's chasing anything anymore. It just feels like he even stated himself, this is a financial thing. At the end of the day, it's just to guarantee even more financial security. And he even mentioned the thing I hated the most about it was, I go out there, I win against some of the top guys, lose against some of the guys. If I do go out there and lose to Anthony here, I fucking hate that shit, man. Why are we even thinking about losing to Anthony Hernandez? I think the mindset for Strickland, he seems much more calm, mellowed. I don't know if he just got done with the 30-round training session or what it was, but and you could say this is the new mythical fighter Strickland, but just based off this interview and everything, even though I think there's so many things leading towards Sean Strickland stylistically being able to dominate this matchup, I think the shoulder injury he brought up in this interview, I think the mindset he brought up in this interview, both of these things are turning me off to picking Sean Strickland, and I'm not going to make the video Sean Strickland's going to dominate Anthony Hernandez. I'm done with it. I'm picking Fluffy Hernandez to win via close decision. I think it's going to be where Anthony Hernandez clearly wins, 3 out of the 5 rounds, and that's going to be it. It's not going to be a split decision. I think it's going to be a unanimous decision, 49-48, all 5 judges. All 3 judges, what the fuck. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for today. I was trying so hard to pick Strickland. I can't do it. That interview turned me the fuck off. Let me know what you guys think, if you guys share the same sentiment or what. But apart from that, I will catch you guys in the next one, and take care.